Hey, how's it going, guys? Domino Paris 21 here, and back again to give you guys another top 5 for you all. So here, just hanging out with all the peeps here. We got Victor here. Got Joey from TeamOrganizationMars. You got I'm Vanguard just playing his witches in the back here. So yeah.
Face punched it.
Wow.
Oh, it's a cruiser too, being a camera.
Sorry, Lord Half-Can playing Final Fantasy VII. But yeah, we're just hanging out here and such. So we decided to gather together and brainstorm a bit on what we feel currently is the top 5 best brake ride combos. Now a couple things is first, we are looking at English only, so it's post, I guess, EV09, extra boosters, set 13 and such. And also, the main criteria we kind of looked at when deciding on brake ride combos, do keep in mind that we're looking at how well the cards in this list combo well with each other. You know, how much synergy they have, and how much the brake ride really does bring more value to the boss unit. So that's mainly the main criteria we went about when deciding on this card list and such. So yes, without further ado, let's actually get started. So I'll let Joey do the first honors.
Alright,
so number 5.
Number 5 for our brake ride, we have Battling Dragger. And the boss card that complements him is Dudley Emperor.
Who else? Who else?
So,
until Lucifer.
For number 5, the reason we used him was because previous to Battling Dragger, Dudley Emperor was okay, but with the addition of the brake ride, he really brought out the use of the Counterblast 2 and Superior Call 2, because the brake ride, what it does is when you ride Dudley Emperor over him, it gives it +10, and the skill where when a rearguard attacks, that rearguard gains +10 and it goes back to the bottom of the deck. So he enables his skill to call 2 rearguards for free, put them back after you attack, and then call 2 more. So that's basically the reason.
It makes a much bigger power play for Dudley Emperor, and really combo like the turn you brake ride Dudley Emperor with like Dudley Mason to even hit for a much higher range, like if your opponent's at 3 and such. It just really can create such a devastating turn for your opponent, and if your opponent's at 4 or 5, then they kind of like scoop. They made you like brake ride these two. So Spike Brothers in general have been a little bit out of the tournament scene and such, but I mean this combination is still deadly. I think people need to get reminded how deadly this combo is. So
alright, so that's number 5.
Moving on to number 4.
Alright, so brake ride, Dauntless Drive Dragon, $40. Ooh.
With
another $40 card.
That's $80 right there.
The most expensive brake ride combo in the game. Dauntless and Novell. So I mean, I don't know if we should even talk more in depth about this.
Not sure we need to go over anything, but I'm sure some of you are surprised that this is number 4 and.
I mean, like I said, the entries that are higher up on this list, I think create a much better synergy and do a lot more for each other. Now, of course, Novell is just Novell. It's a Silent Tom on steroids. It's amazing, and giving it +10 and the ability to attack twice with double twin drive is just really, really good. But one big thing, though, I kind of put my own criteria on, especially brake ride combination that make it higher in this list. I always look at that as having more consistent win potential. So you're gonna see that the brake ride combinations I do have higher up on this list have that. Now, like I said, Novell and Dauntless is such a crazy combination, but there are situations where, a lot of times, let's say your opponent's at 3 damage and you brake ride Novell over Dauntless, a lot of times your opponent will take the first attack, block the second with the perfect guard, so it's a little bit easier to play around. I mean, nonetheless, it's still annoying to deal with, but there's ways to kind of work around it as opposed to other combos where in really not in very little situation where it's not very good, I guess you could say. But like I said, the brake ride combos in the higher up entries have a little bit more win potential, and that's less situational, I guess you could say.
And moving on to number 3.
Number 3. Now I know this is Joey's personal cards. This may be a surprise to some people, but
we felt that for number 3, this, how would you say, it created a very bad situation for your opponent on brake ride turn. So here we are with Infinite Zero Dragon and Star Vader, Chaos Breaker, Dragon like no other. This deck, these 2 cards actually still make some players cry, and I know that this is one of the better decks to play against the new Novell.
Novell.
Yay. With Infinite Zero Dragon, he just gives Chaos Breaker that huge plus, you could say. It enables Chaos Breaker like no other card in the deck.
It allows you to get that mass lock going, because Chaos Breaker, I mean, he can lock one unit himself, but it's only one at a time, as comboing him with the Break Ride to potentially triangle lock your opponent, lock them down with only one unboosted Vanguard attack, and then just plussing really hard off all those locked units is what makes these two cards work so amazingly well together. Now, I think the big surprise is, is why isn't this any higher on the list? Well, just like as me, Joey, and the other guys discussed, we feel like the other two entries on the top of this list have a lot more win potential to turn you Break Ride. Now the way Chaos Breaker essentially wins is by, well, winning by the grind game, late game, within the next few turns or such, just by, just beating your opponent by advantage and just grinding them out with those locks. So that's pretty much the main reason why we decided to put this at number 3, but it's still a very devastating Break Ride combo. A lot of cases really annoying still. I think people forget how annoying this deck is.
Yeah.
Novell kind of like took the spotlight for that.
Moving on to, or actually before that, before we go on to top 2, let's do some honorable mentions.
Now, starting off with honorable mentions, of course, since there's a lot of other Break Rides I think deserve some recognition that didn't make the list. This is actually one of my personal favorite ones. We got Jewel Knight Ashley with Julia.
The cards so expensive!
Like Julia, I think hasn't been talked about a lot, but I think you guys probably seen it featured on my channel a little bit. But the way Julia works is at the end of battle, Limit Break 4, at the end of battle, for every critical she has on her, you superior call that many Jewel Knights from your deck with Counterblast 2. So obviously with Ashley, now Ashley of course got a lot of bad rep for being potentially the worst Break Ride with just +10 and a crit, which isn't great. But when combining a Julia to potentially call out, what, 3 units? 2 units automatically before hitting any crits and stacking more critical triggers to put on the Julia to turn you Break Ride can lead to a nice big plus and just having have a nice onslaught of attacks on that turn. So a lot of times, I mean, you could really devastate your opponent with this combination here, and also at the same time, I mean, they just work so well together, and that's, like I said, that's the main criteria I looked at. So Julia, I feel, actually made Ashley a little bit better, so more playable until Ashley Reverse comes out. So, but yeah, that is one of my entries for honorable mention.
And
next up
we have Prism Image, Vert, and Prism Promise, Labrador.
Or Emmy.
Lowly's motherfucker. Emmy's so adorable.
Vic, this is kind of actually your deck, so I'll just let you explain how this works.
Yeah, sure. Anyways, she gives Labrador a really good setup. Only because you could return 2 cards and then draw 1 card off it on Break Ride.
So it's nice just to be able to pick up your field that we don't have to use Labrador.
Counterblast.
So it kind of buys you an extra turn. Yeah. Allows you to maybe draw into other units.
Yeah, and then the fact that she gets her limit break is called up to 3 prisms from your hand, and then gets +1,000 and a crit on top of that. So it's like potentially a 31 crit 2 by itself.
If your opponent doesn't have a perfect guard, there will be a lot of gambling involved or a lot of dying involved. But like, it's not a very devastating combo, but Vert really does a good job of setting up Labrador. Just a free setup in a sense. So so that's the one thing I really liked about it. So simple as that.
And moving on to top 2.
Now to top 2.
No clown.
Now going on to the number 2 on the list, we have Beast Deity Ethics Buster and Deadliest Beast Deity Ethics Buster Reverse. Now I know Reverse does get a lot of bad rep for, I guess, being a mediocre card by himself, having a very hefty cost, but when combining him with Ethics Buster, 8 attacks. Very, very strong. And I remember, even in one box tournament I played at, I was actually, of course, piloting Novell I remember dealing with the combination of Ethics Buster Reverse and Ethics Buster, and I was already at 2 damage, but I was down to only like 1 card left after all said is done, because 8 attacks is really no joke. And like I said, you know, with Ethics Buster, it actually makes Ethics Reverse a lot more viable, a lot better, and just the synergy they bring to each other. Again, like I said, now in case you guys actually don't know how this works, Ethics Buster reads as when you break ride, so you ride Ethics Reverse on top of Ethics Buster, your Vanguard gains the ability till the end of turn where when he attacks your opponent's Vanguard, you stand up your front row. Do keep in mind, with Ethics Reverse being a restander, you get to use that skill a second time, so that's how you initiate the 8 attacks. So, very strong very strong combination. Like I said, a lot of win potential in the turn you break ride. That's one reason why I know Joey agreed with me on this one too, why we decided to put this as number 2. Joey, you had any additional thoughts on it?
Everything that Domino just said, plus the fact that it is a cross ride, so it does get that defensive 13k body after everything is done. Assuming your opponent is still alive after the 8 attacks, right? So, you know, it's, 1, it's a cross ride, 2, it gives you 8 freaking attacks with no stand triggers, and 3, it's, you know, it allows his skill to be much better. It takes off his, his cost, being Counterblast 2, Discard 2, and Lock 2.
Before attacking, which is a
Before attacking, and which is a really high cost, and he gives you a sort of a break on that, you know, break ride.
Yeah, that's all you did there. One thing I like too, because really the strategy when you play Ethics Reverse, if you know you're gonna break ride Ethics Reverse, you really don't want to like call a lot, commit to your field a little bit too early, because then your opponent will kind of keep you from limit breaking and just keep bullying your rear guards, which will then piss you off. So it's usually a good idea to conserve a little bit early. But the fact is that you have 8 attack going at your opponent essentially makes up for that, and maybe even then some. So. It's definitely worth just to hold back a little bit, and then Ethics Reverse and Ethics Buster combination just makes up for all of that. And it can really catch opponents by surprise, because like they'll sit back and think that, you know, they're sitting fine, they're sitting pretty, and then all of a sudden you break ride this, and they you know, especially with opponents I used this against, they really don't realize how many cards it really takes to deal with this. So to deal with this onslaught, so very powerful.
All right, and for number 1.
For number 1, we have Transcore Dragon, and I'll let Joey put this one down.
And we have the soon-to-be Legion Cross Ride? Question mark? Tetra Drive Dragon.
Business suit dragon.
He means business.
Can we get a close-up of that? He's a boss.
It's right there. I don't have the man on me. But yes, so definitely me and Joey are actually a fellow dedicated Aquaforce players, and there's a lot of good things we have to say about it. But Joey, I'll go ahead and let you start things off in terms of why we have this as number 1.
Well, first of all, in the current meta, we see this guy running around everywhere. Alright? So, this deck, surprisingly... Wrong card. This deck, surprisingly, can really go toe-to-toe with Novell. Me and Domino have play tested and really how can you say worked out most of the kinks with these decks, and we've just found that Transcore combined with Tetra Drive can really
it does devastate your opponent that same turn.
It can put your opponent at a very high alert and make them drop a lot of cards.
Basically, it's kind of the same ideas with Ethics Buster, Reverse, and Ethics Buster. Transcore, not a really amazing break ride by himself, but what he does is when you break ride, when your Vanguard, till the end of turn, that's important, whenever your Vanguard attacks your opponent's Vanguard, your opponent has to discard 1 card. If they choose not to, then he gains a crit and they can't guard. So you either discard or die. But the fact is that Tetra is a restanding Vanguard, allowing you to use that skill a second time. Basically, the way it works is this. Now, in order to initiate Tetra Drive, you have to get 4 attacks. If you could get at least a decent feel where you can have a nice, good maxed out feel where essentially almost all your attacks are pretty much going to threaten your opponent at some way to force out their hand. Essentially, you have the first attack, which I guess could be a Diamantes, that's 1 card out of their hand. The second attack has to be Tetra, so they have to discard 1 card for Transcore, and it's minimum 2 cards to block him normally, since it's at least minimum 21. So that's 3 cards, and then you get the third attack. That's 5 cards. The fourth attack from the rear guard. That's 6 cards. And then Tetra restands again. And then, essentially, like I said, they have to discard and then guard again. So it costs 3 cards to block Tetra with Transcore each time. So that's minimum 9 cards, not even accounting for triggers and such, that your opponent has to have in order to survive this. And even if your opponent happens to survive, they're not going to be left with much to work with the following turn. So one thing I really liked about this as being number 1 is the simple fact is win potential. It has a lot of win potential. Either it can win right then and there, with this restanding combination, or like I said, your opponent will just be so dwindled away with a lot of their defensive resources that they're not going to really survive, you know, 4 attacks and a restanding Tetra the following turn most of the time. And one big point that me and Joey agreed on is, at the same time, it's not as situational to use this combination, because a lot of times, you know, like if you go Dauntless Novell, you kind of want to wait till your opponent's at 4 or more a lot of times. And there's even other break rides where, like for instance, maybe the Dudley Emperor and Baton Dragger, you kind of want your opponent to be at a higher damage rate, but with this combination here, it doesn't really matter where the damage is with your opponent. If your opponent maybe has like 2 or 3, that's fine, because if you can crit them like that first attack, it immediately puts them at 5 and they have to block everything else. Or like I said, just the fact that like these cards itself forced out a lot of cards from your opponent's hand by themselves is what makes it so great. So I mean, I don't know, me and Joey love this combination.
And to add on to everything said, Tetra Drive, his cost to restand is really low and cost effective. All he does is after the 4th battle, he counterblasts 2 and discard 2. So you're not really losing cards per se. You're just giving up 1 twin drive.
You're basically recycling a twin drive.
Yeah.
And Aqua Force, I mean, obviously, of course, depending on your build, but if you build your deck right, you're pretty much going to have a lot of consistency going with getting this combination off. And like I said, it's not as situational as others, and it's just it's just amazing. It's amazing. And honestly, I'd say this is arguably the worst matchup that Novell has, because Novell can easily be devastated when you catch him at the right time with this combination. So that's definitely even more reason to give it number 1. So yeah, so there you have it, guys. That is our top 5 list. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below. Let us know what you guys think and your personal opinions on it. And of course, thank you to Joey from Team Organization Mars for his input. Very insightful input. And to Perel for letting me use his tripod.
hey Gabe, are you recording?
Anyways, as always, guys, thanks again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Team Organization Mars. I'll have a link around here, and we'll see you guys later. And then, guys.